And good morning to you. Welcome to 88.9 Win FM, and I'm Cheryl, Lacey, and this show is Leading Education. Right now we have Cathy Brown, a certified AI consultant and STEM education specialist, and she's also a film producer. Cathy, welcome to the show.
Hi, how are you, Cheryl?
I'm terrific, Cathy. It's great to have you and talk about being an expert at just the right time, but I'm sure you're not an AI expert overnight. This has been years in the making.
Absolutely. I started in the big two-storey building back at Sydney University, shoving punch cards into the computer we imported from somewhere overseas on research projects back then. But I have always been interested in technology and the next thing, and I don't know that anybody's an expert in AI, but I've done a lot of work in it, and I like to share those experiences.
Indeed, and in fact, it's funny you talk about punch cards. I remember those punch cards very well, and I also remember the telex machine really, really well. So, you know, we talk about AI and people seem to think it's ChatGPT, but of course it's got a very long history. And as a school teacher, you know, in the 80s, one of the big ones that we were dealing with was the calculator. And I don't think people think of that as AI.
Well, AI is just really the calculator on steroids. It's a machine that has been fed a lot of data and it comes up with responses. And the calculator was hard-coded, so certain combinations would give you certain outputs. And AI is just generally coded on everything that people can grab from the world that they want to put into their GPT.
What does AI, we know it stands for artificial intelligence, but perhaps for our listeners, can you talk us through what that actually is and what it means?
Well, it's a LLM, large language model or a large image model or whatever you like to put in there, that it's got a huge data source of inputs that it uses to compare your prompt, and it then delivers an answer based on probabilities. It's not actually a truth machine or a lie machine, as some people portray it. It's a probability machine, and it predicts from its vast amount of data the probable answer to your prompt or the probable picture that you're wanting it to respond when you've given it an image prompt. So that's why that program that I'm just at the moment writing a series of lessons for AI in education using very low risk, I call it NLR no to low risk AI, and one of them is on a program called Quick Draw, which is free. You don't have to log in. Using it, you can see the data source for Quick Draw to compare your images to. The kids can integrate it with maths, with graphs, with understanding the elements of an object, etc., etc. So very simple options allow you to start the AI discussion and show you how these AIs work, which basically they collect a lot of data. The bigger the data set, the better the outcome, and then they predict from that data set the best options.
So basically what you're saying is that AI collects information from the users of technology and then spits it back out based on the questions or input of another user. So everything that we do on a device is available to the world, and we have no idea of knowing who's accessing it at any given time.
Well, that's not quite correct, because you can switch off the usage of your data on certain of the AIs that you use. And there is a bit of a confusion here. I'm delighted that people want to use my data to improve how the world works and improve answers on AI, provided it's data I want them to use. I don't want them to use my personal data. I don't want them to use my IP. I don't want them to use a whole lot of things. So then you need to look at how to restrict that usage, which a lot of the AI has options to do that. So ChatGPT, you go on there, they will use your data, and you can actually opt out of that option. Everybody's been using Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn for quite a while, and a lot of the back end of that is data that's used. But then what my question is there data there that really matters to you, that is easy to use to improve outputs from an AI? And a lot of the data people input, there isn't. You don't want them to use personal data. You don't want them to use data that you don't want them to use, basically. But It's the same as going to a library. You go to a library to read a book, get information, and get data, and then you synthesise with your mind, if you're creative, an answer to probably an essay question or something. This is a version of that on steroids. And the data that they're using is really data that you need to think about. Do I mind if this goes into this pool of material that everybody can use or not?
So I'm going to come back and just get a better understanding here for our listeners. And for those of you that have just joined us, we've got Cathy Brown, certified AI consultant and STEM education specialist. And we're talking about AI here, and particularly we'll move into AI in schools and education in just a minute. Cathy, what I'm hearing you saying, sure, it all makes sense. If I have no control over the information fed to ChatGPT, because you're talking about IP, but if somebody decides that they're going to put into the chat or onto LinkedIn or any of those other areas, or on a website, for example, or into a database that's inaccurate, then, and then someone else wants information about something or other or some person, then you're up for all sorts of falsehoods, and that can be troublesome. So where do we start thinking about these things, and where do we start identifying the value or otherwise of chat? Because we know that we've had all manner of issues with technology in schools, all manner of issues with phones and one-to-one devices. Schools are frantically demanding that government help them with these, banning of phones, when in fact schools allowed them in the first place. So we get excited, we throw things out there without giving due credit to the investigations required as to what the strengths and the future issues could be if we don't roll these things out properly.
So that was a good question with a lot of things rolled into it.
Yes.
AI is a probability machine. It bases that probability on the data that it has, the data set that it has. If wrong information is put in there, if right information is put in there, if researches that are done, like one I just read recently, which is really a amalgamation of papers where they picked 78 out of a possible 900 papers so that it aligned with their objective and their end result, you will get misinformation. You will get truth. AI does not tell the truth, but it does not tell a lie either. What it does is it analyses the information that it has, and from that information, what it does is gives you the best probable answer. And I had a little video on my site where they played that children's game of what word comes next. And that's, in elementary sense, how AI works. It's a probability machine. Now, what I find exciting about that is this brings into play critical thinking. It brings into play creative thinking. So the AI gives you an answer. You read that answer, and in reference to your understanding of the world, you can say, well, that is correct, and I like that answer. Or you can say, provide me with links to your sources of reference for this information, and double-check the links so that they all work so I can read it. So you have to double-check it, and you have to verify that evidence. The best lesson I gave to a class recently, a demonstration lesson, we had to do a lesson, and I introduced a little bit of AI with everything I do. So this was a teacher-led My Login ChatGPT question, and I asked it to give me a character breakdown of one of the books they were reading that had a dingo in it. And the GPT got the dingo character absolutely incorrect. They called it a kangaroo, and the kids cracked up. They laughed because in their experience of the world, this was an incorrect response. And so we wrote back to the GPT, well, you got that wrong. The character is the dingo, not the kangaroo. And that is great in front of a class. And if you're working with your children personally, think about it in relation to your view of the world, but also ask the GPT to provide you with the sources for its information and check those links, go outside the GPT and check on Google or in books or anything else you have to verify that information. So I find it really powerful because when I was researching things, I would spend hours finding the resources. GPT can find it in a minute or 30 seconds, and then I can look through those resources and see which ones are valid, like the one that I just found where they were getting hysterical about screen time. And it was an article that was not a research project. It had 978 papers available on the topic, from which they'd chosen 78. So I have the power now of really digging deep into verifying that information that I get from the GPT.
It's exciting, but it's also a little bit scary, I have to say. And when I say a little bit scary, and I know I'm speaking on behalf of a lot of parents and a lot of educators as well, where we have the newspapers that constantly spit out information and data from research. We have the term evidence-based in schools. The evidence is not always accurate because it's a snapshot of a handful of people or 1,000 people out of 10,000 or 100,000, and we're expected to believe that that's the case. It's a mean average based on a certain number of people at a given time. If we don't understand that, and if we continue to say evidence-based teaching, and our educators actually don't stop and think about what that evidence is and if it's at all accurate, how on earth do they get a licence to use ChatGPT in schools?
I like using it, and as a teacher, log in as a demo to a class, and you do have that New South Wales Edu one that we can use here. As a demo, under a control, I think it's the best position to be in because you are actually modelling the correct use of ChatGPT to the kids. And you do that way before they're allowed to use it at 13 plus. So I think it's hugely powerful to model the use of ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini or anything else to the kids.
So maybe what this is doing is forcing teachers to think because, that would be a good thing too.
The demo is so powerful. But I'm in the series that I'm writing, and I've written 6 books in the Amazing Stories series, which are all AI generated. And reading them, there's PDFs and videos. So reading them immediately generates questions about AI. So what you can do is think about AI, and then you've got programs like Whisk AI, which are free to use, which is amazing. A lot of free usage. The kids can type their sentences in or read them if they want to. An image appears like magic, which is showing them how their words can generate pictures. Modification and iteration of those words can change those images. And then click on it and you can animate it. So it's introducing them to the possibilities of the world. And that's via teacher login. And I do it when I'm working with kids 2 at a time while the rest are rotating through other activities. So it's all supervised. And I am then demonstrating rather than allowing them direct access to that material.
Okay, great. That's terrific to hear one approach with AI. Cathy, just before you go, and this has been a terrific conversation, and I'm sure there'll be listeners wanting to know more about this, so I'll have to get you back another time. But just before we go, there's a term that's being spouted called digital dementia. And it's implying that children born after 2010 won't live past the age of 50. Where does that come from?
That was a hysterical article written. That was the one I was referring to earlier. 978 pages were reviewed, 78 were chosen to put together. It wasn't even a study. It was just a paper written that used source material, a lot of source material to provide a paper that they got published. And it was not a thorough research project. It was not validated. It was nothing. It was just a headline that was clickbait. And this is damaging totally because it builds fear. ChatGPT isn't the only way into this material. Getting kids educated so they understand the space, they understand how image generation works. They understand how music can be made using AI. They understand how my favourite is Teachable Machine, which allows kids to input the data themselves, and then they can train the model, and then they can test the model, and they get an understanding of how AI works because it's part of their world.
Okay, that's great. Thanks, Cathy. You're on 88.9 Win FM. I'm Cheryl Lacey, and we've just had Cathy Brown, Certified AI Consultant and STEM Education Specialist. Thanks for joining us on the show, Cathy.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Thank you.